Success or failure? It's been 10 months since we moved to Prince Rupert, and this is my first time having a garden here. And guess what I'm going to be doing today? Does anybody know? Yes, I am going to be harvesting from this bed. I already started the harvest, and in this bed I have potatoes, various colors that I bought from the stores, and it's the baby potatoes, and I decided that I am going to grow them and see how it turns out. And then here I have regrown cabbage that I have been harvesting the foliage. It is just trying to fold. Over here is another regrown cabbage that is folding. And here is the only Chinese cabbage that I have, but unfortunately the slugs that is, took over and decimated it. I'm trying to see if I can get seeds from it, but I'm not sure if I should save the seeds. It's difficult to find the Chinese cabbage seeds in this region because I have been searching, which is why I am trying to see if I can get seeds from it. As you can see, it is folding quite nicely, but all the outer leaves has been decimated. So it is harvest time. I started harvesting this morning, so we are just gonna go through and see just what is the result of growing here in Prince Rupert. This bed was covered with this fabric because I have brassicas in here, so I didn't put plastic on it because I didn't want the bed to get too hot. The temperatures went up to 23 for the summer. So it is fairly cool. But one of the things that has been happening is that the slugs got in this bed, as I mentioned, and if you look at the leaves, you can see how they have been decimating the potatoes. Look at that. Oh my goodness. And there is one there, and I think it's time for him to say goodbye. I know there are many conflicts about doing things the humane way, and I'm not one who just simply follow the crowd. I make my own decisions. So my belief is that you must not take a life unless it is necessary. And when I say life, I'm not talking about human life, because that's never necessary. But any living creatures, you don't just go around killing creatures for no apparent reason. So for me, if I see a snail or a slug or any form of pest like down there on the ground, they're not in my garden, fine, that's okay. I let them be, even though I know some of them are going to end up in my garden eventually. They're not in my garden at that particular time, so it is okay. They can do whatever it is that they want. However, if they are in my garden, then I will get rid of them. I won't give them a chance to come back into my garden. Once they enter it once and they get caught by me, that's it. Okay, and if I'm killing snails in my garden, I do not allow them to stay in the garden when I get rid of them, because I don't want to squish them and then end up with their eggs hatching in the garden. So I take them out. And there's another one. I take them out and dispose of them. because while we are trying to get rid of the snails and the slugs, if we crush them in the garden, instead of having one snail or one slug in the garden, they may have loads of eggs. So you just multiplied your problems. So what I'm going to be doing is, as I go through the bed here, I am going to be sterilizing this bed. I am not certain if I should take this material out and use hot water to sterilize it for the winter, but then the snails might go back in there. So what I am thinking of doing, and I'm undecided on that, is, those are some nice potatoes. What I'm thinking of doing, I'm wondering, should I take this out and use it in my indoor garden, sterilize it first for both pathogens and pests with hot water. You can use hydrogen peroxide, 3 to 6% hydrogen peroxide, and dilute it in water to sterilize your garden. But as I am growing organically, I don't want to use hydrogen peroxide because that is a chemical. Does anybody know what type of cocoon this is? The next thing that I'm going to be doing is, for these foliage that remains of the potatoes, I am going to be taking them out of the garden. Usually I would bury whatever material I get back into the garden, or I would compost it. But here, if I'm composting outdoors, it's going to be a challenge because compost need air, and if it is getting air, there's a strong possibility that pests are going to be able to enter through the air holes. That you have in your compost bin. And for that reason, I don't have a compost outside. Well, that's not quite true. I do have a compost bin outside with holes in it, and occasionally tiny holes like 1/8 or 1/16 of an inch, but lots and lots and lots of holes. But the cover is not sealed tight. And so what I notice is that snails will crawl up the side of the bin and enter through the covers. And that is what I'm trying to avoid. So what I do, when I'm ready to use that compost, which I am when I'm making my raised beds, I take those compost and I put it in the bed. So what I do is, unfortunately, this method works in terms of sterilizing the compost to ensure that there are no pests in there, but it also kills the microbes, because before I put it in my garden, I have to make sure that I have no snails and stuff like that in there. Some pests you can control with organic methods, but then I don't know what to do about the snails. So the only method I can think of that really works without putting chemicals in my garden is to use the hot water. Ensures that both the snails, the slugs, and their eggs get destroyed. And especially since as I'm putting my garden indoors, then I can't afford to bring those pests into the house. So yes, I treat it with the hot water. The unfortunate thing about doing that, though, as I was saying, is that microbes, the beneficial insects in your soil, a lot of things get destroyed when you use the hot water method. But if you have to start over, if I have to start over with the microbes and all those things, then that is fine. Thankfully, I do have my worm farm, and so I can just keep adding the worm castings, and that will help to replace the microbes. Now, as for my cabbage, I'm going to be harvesting the foliage of it, some of it, and I'm just gonna let it stay there and keep regrowing, because for this year I did not have a lot of cabbage growing, because now I'm down to a tiny garden. I miss my garden in Saskatchewan. I really do miss it. Earlier this morning, that is, I harvested my pak choy seeds. I uprooted the plant and I have them drying. The unfortunate thing with harvesting the other materials from this bed, though, is that the snails and the slugs are going to turn to my cabbages, because that's all that is going to be left in here. Just 3 plants. 1 Chinese cabbage and do you guys harvest these little potatoes? And if so, what do you do with them? I like to steam them in meat. And sometimes I just allow them to stay back in the soil and grow potatoes for the following year. But as I'm going to be sterilizing the soil, I'm not going to allow any to stay back unless I missed it. Then that's fine. Okay, so the good thing is, as I go through this, I'm not seeing any snails like lying in the soil. Of course, they could have their eggs there. It's been so many years since I had to deal with snails that I don't really know what to expect from them, because I haven't had to deal with snails in my garden since I left Jamaica. So, and that's more than a decade ago. I know how I would take care of the snails in Jamaica, but in these areas, although Prince Rupert does not get fire, we still have the fire ban. So the method that I would use to control these snails is not an option, because how I control them is to burn the wood and take the ash and sprinkle it in my garden, because it melts the snails. It's such a pity that I'm going to have to use the hot water to sterilize these. So what I will do is take the content out, put it in large containers, and then pour hot water in it. Oh, I see that disgusting little guy there trying to feast on my plants. Oh, don't run away. Come on here. Come on. You got to go, buddy. This is no place for you. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to harvest some of the foliage off this. And what I'm going to be doing as of now is I'm going to just keep dumping the nitrogen on these plants so that they keep producing foliage, because the growing season is coming close to an end and I would like to have more of this cabbage that I can eat during the winter. So I'm going to keep harvesting the foliage, because the more you harvest the foliage, the more it keeps producing. So I'm going to keep harvesting, cut it up and blanch it and freeze it, and just keep doing that to ensure that I have a nice supply for the winter. Yes, so back to what I was saying, I'm going to take the soil out of this and put it in large containers and use hot water to sterilize it, and then it may become a part of my indoor garden so that I can keep growing over the winter. I'm still undecided if I'm gonna take that route yet, because for those of you who have been following me, you know that this is a rented property and I don't know how long I'm going to be here, because our lease will be up in October and we have the option to renew, but we don't know what we're gonna do just yet, if we're gonna renew or if we're going to be going somewhere else. So I am still undecided as to whether or not I should be setting up my indoor garden. I know I will have one, but I don't know if I'm going to be using up all the space that I have for it, because if I move, there's no guarantee that I'm going to find a house that has a space in the basement that I can use for my indoor garden. And if I move to somewhere where I don't have that, it means that all of this is going to have to be left behind. It means all of the garden that I have inside, I would have to pull it down. Don't know what I would do with all that material. But anyway, that's the plan. So let's see. I'm just gonna clean this up and show you my harvest. So I'm done cleaning up my harvest from that one bed, and here it is. 3 varieties of potatoes. This is a patchy scallion, but unfortunately they didn't seem to do so well in that bed, so I took them out, cleaned them up, and I'm going to be putting them in a small container so that they can grow in there instead of with the other material. And over here is my regrown cabbage that I've harvested. So if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more update on what's going on in my garden and get more gardening tips, then please subscribe to my channel, and you can leave a comment in the section below. Thank you so much for watching, and have yourself a wonderful day. Yeah man, a time for grow.